Hello everyone, it's Miss Angela from the Fort Worth Public Library. Welcome back to another Fort Worth Nature Center Discovery Club story time. Today we are talking about a bird that goes quack quack. Do you know what it is? It's a duck. Can you quack with me? Quack quack. Great job. We're going to sing a song that maybe you've heard before. It's 5 Little Ducks. So you're going to need your whole hand for this one, and you can do the motions along with me. First, let's count our fingers here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 little ducks. 5 little ducks went out one day over the hills and far away. Mother duck said quack, 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 but only 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 little ducks came back. 4 little ducks went out one day over the hills and far away. Mother duck said quack, 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 but only, how many this time? 1, 2, 3. 3 little ducks came back. 3 little ducks went out one day over the hills and far away. Mother duck said quack, 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 but only 2. 1, 2. Little ducks came back. 2 little ducks went out one day over the hills and far away. Mother duck said quack, 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 but only 1 little duck came back. 1 little duck went out one day over the hills and far away. Mother duck said quack, 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 but none of her 5 little ducks came back. Oh no. So sad Mother duck went out one day over the hills and far away. Mother duck said quack, 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 and all of her 5 little ducks came back. Yay! Finger plays and songs are a great way to practice counting up and down. Our story for today is about a duck who turned out to maybe not be a duck. It's The Ugly Duckling by Hans Christian Andersen. Once upon a time, there was a mother duck who was sitting on her 3 eggs waiting for them to hatch. She heard a cracking sound and jumped up to let the ducklings come out of their shells. 2 eggs had hatched. Peep, peep, said the 2 ducklings. Quack, quack, said the mother, and then they all quacked as well as they could. Quack, 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 quack. But there is 1 egg left. How strange. This egg is larger than the other ones were, but I guess I will sit back down. At last the large egg broke, and a young one crept forth, crying, peep, peep. It was very large and ugly. The duck stared at it and exclaimed, "It is very large and not at all like the others. I wonder if it is a duck at all. We shall soon find out, however, when we go to the water." The mother duck took her 3 hatchlings down to the water and jumped in with a splash. "Quack, quack!" she cried, and one after another the little ducklings jumped in. It took a few minutes, but soon they were all swimming with their legs paddling under them as easily as you please, and the ugly duckling was also in the water swimming with them. "Oh," said the mother, "she must be a duck. Look how well she swims in the pond. She is my own child, and she is not so very ugly after all if you look properly. Quack, quack, come with me." The 2 yellow ducklings quacked just like their mother, but the brown duckling could not quack. She tried, but it came out like this. Crrr, crrr. As they swam, the 2 yellow ducklings whispered to each other about the big brown duckling. "She is so ugly," said one. "She cannot even quack," said the other. The ugly duckling heard them and swam away. The mother duck thought that all of her ducklings were behind her, so she kept swimming to the other side of the pond. The ugly duckling spent a lonely night, crying and feeling sorry for herself. The next morning the duckling saw a beautiful white bird flying in the sky. It made a sound that was not a quack, like Mother Duck. It was more like a honk. When the duckling heard that sound, she gave a little honk herself. Honk. "No, no," she thought, "I must try to quack." But she felt something strange as she looked at the white bird. Mother Duck looked and finally found the ugly duckling and brought her back home. The ugly duckling tried and tried to be a good duck all through the winter. She didn't notice that she was changing. One day, as she was practicing her quacks, quonk, 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 a beautiful white bird like the one she had seen flying swam by her. "Why are you trying to quack?" asked the bird. "Because I want to be a good duck," said the duckling. "But you are not a duck," cried the bird. "I'm not?" "No, you're a swan, like me. Haven't you seen your beautiful white feathers?" The ugly duckling looked down at her reflection and saw that over the winter she had grown into a beautiful white bird. "Why don't you come with me and the other swans in my flock? We'll teach you how to honk properly, like a swan." So the ugly duckling was no longer an ugly duckling, and she said farewell to Mother Duck and flew off with her new friend the swan. The end. Thanks for joining us, everyone. It's time to pass it over to Mr. Michael at the Nature Center to tell you more about ducks. See you next time.
Hello everyone, this is Michael Perez with the Fort Worth Nature Center Refuge. Welcome back to another week of Discovery Club. Thank you, Miss Angela, for that story time about ducks. We really appreciate your involvement. So let's continue on and talk about ducks. I love ducks. I love talking about ducks. They're one of my favorite groups of animals. So let's talk a little bit about them. As we always do, we're going to talk about what a duck is, or what our topic is, and our topic is ducks. So what they are. We're going to talk about some of their adaptations, what allows them to survive. We'll talk about migration, we'll talk about habitats, and also the importance of ducks. And after we talk all about that, we're going to show you some pictures. We'll go through a little slideshow, if you will, of some ducks that we have here at the Fort Worth Nature Center and Refuge. So that's what we have on schedule for this morning. So I have a duck here, not a real one. I tried calling Disney and said, "Hey, can you have Donald Duck come out?" And, well, I didn't get that far. But I thought that'd be fun, right? If we had Donald Duck. But we don't have Donald Duck this morning. What we have is a duck. It's a taxidermy duck. I see y'all. Y'all see me? So we have this taxidermy duck. And this animal here, we have several of these animals that are taxidermy, which means they're stuffed. Once they've passed away in some form or fashion, we can collect the bodies and have them stuffed, so we can have some visual representations of that particular animal, in this case, a duck. So as we talked about before in Discovery Club, the different features of certain animal groups, we're going to talk more about that. So we have a duck here, and ducks are members of not the mammal group, not reptile, because they don't have hair. Mammals don't. Well, mammals do, but this one doesn't have hair. Reptiles have scales. It doesn't have scales. So we have a bird, because they're covered in feathers, and that's the most important thing. Now, in weeks past, we talked about feathers. I showed you a feather and messed it all up, then kind of got it straightened up together again. But we're going to talk we're going to go a little further and talk about feathers and the importance of feathers. We talked about what they are and really briefly, or described them and even showed you some. But let's going to talk about different types of feathers. Okay, so in the case of this duck, they have several different types of feathers. First main type of feathers you're going to see here are the wings. Okay, on the wings, those feathers help them to fly, as well as the tail feathers. They serve as brakes. If you ever watch a duck flying into the water, I encourage you to do that. As it's flying in water, you can watch those tail feathers they spread out, and they serve as like a brake. So these are flight feathers. All the feathers you see on the wing and the tail, they're considered flight feathers. So they allow that bird to fly away and escape danger and move around to find food, comfort, place to live, all the above. So flight feathers. They also have these feathers, and their flight feathers mainly on the wings and their tail. They also have these feathers on their back here, and their chest over here, and on the flanks on the side. Those are called contour feathers. Now, contour feathers are very important because it gives the identity of the bird. I feel like the guy on Home Improvement. Is it Wilson, right? He's covered like this, and he's talking. You don't see his mouth moving, but you can hear the voice, I think. So that's for the parents out there. So anyway, the contour feathers give it its identity, its coloration, the plumage, and so forth. And duck feathers are very important. Like a lot of feathers, or birds that have feathers, the feathers on their body are important because it allows, for example, water, being in the water, ducks are, the water is like a coating on it, so that waxy coating, if you will, as the water goes down, it just rolls down the back and keeps it nice and dry. You've heard the phrase, or you may have heard the phrase, that's just water off a duck's back or something like that. It's basically saying, I just kind of rolls, you say something about me, like my kids, they call me names, they're joking around, calling me names, it's like water rolling down a duck's back. It just, whatever, you know. Y'all have the big heads, not me. I'm always picking on my kids or singling my kids out. But I can do that. All right, so anyway, these feathers here allows that water to bead off. Keeps it dry, but not only does it keep it dry, it reduces the weight. Okay, imagine water building up. Okay, think about a towel. You have a towel, or even a sponge, whatever it is, and as it collects water, it gets heavier, right? Because it's holding. Well, same thing here. Now, it doesn't absorb it like a towel or a sponge, but it stays on top of it and can reduce weight. And when you're flying, that's a very, very important feature. So we have flight feathers, we have these contour feathers, and underneath these feathers here, we also have, I don't know if you can see them, might be hard to see, but we also have these white feathers at the bottom, close to the body, called down feathers. And down feathers are important to keep the bird warm. You ever have like a down jacket, or, I can get above it so I can see my mouth, a down jacket or down coat, a down blanket, down pillows, and those are supposed to be designed in such a way, or have the down in them to keep you nice and warm. So that's what those down feathers serve. That's the purpose that they serve along the body of this duck, is to keep the body temperature warm. So ducks are birds, and they're covered in feathers, and have different types of feathers, like flight feathers to help them fly, contour feathers to give them identity, as well as keeping them dry, allowing the water just to bead off. And then inside, or close to their body, the down feathers to keep them nice and warm. So that's a little bit about birds and feathers, and the functionality, or the function of those birds. Now let's talk a little bit, I'm probably going to get my friend here in a second, talk about some of the adaptations. Now, as always, we talked about, or not always, but we've talked about adaptations before. An adaptation is basically a physical trait or a behavior that allows an animal to survive in its environment. So that's what an adaptation is. So let's talk about some of the things that this duck has that allows him to survive. Because you think about it, it's in the water. Okay, so we talked about the water repellency, the ability for the water just to beat off of those feathers and not collect, just fall off. We talked, that's a cool adaptation, the feathers and how those feathers are used. But there's some other adaptations, other physical traits, and I guess behavioral traits we'll talk about in a second, that allows this duck to survive. So let's go with the first one. Now, we know, well, let's talk about where ducks are found. You can find them mainly where? That's right, in a wetland, a pond, a lake, a little stream or a river, a slow-moving river, and so forth. That's where you're going to find them. They're going to be in the water. Now, if you live in the water, you have to be really good at a couple of things. Number one, staying dry, which we already discussed. Those feathers allow them to do that. But you have to be able to swim, right? You got to swim. Now, ducks have specialized feet that allow them to swim. Now, I'm going to show you, it's a mold. It's something that we can make animal tracks with. And so it's the mold, so you pour the plaster in there, in this, what I'm about to show you, the mold, and then you let it dry, and then you peel it out, and then you have your little track or your print. So here's the mold for a duck. Now you can see it has little digits, and when we say digits, it's basically me saying toes, okay? So digits and toes. So if you hear me say digits, I'm talking about their toes. So you can see it has 3 digits there. Actually it has 4, but you can't see the 4th one there. But 3 digits. Now in between each digit is this right here, this skin. That's called webbing. So that's one of the adaptations that ducks have. They have that web, they have webbed feet in order for them to paddle and swim. Now, as we said, they're very light. Those feathers are light, so they can float on the water. But those web-like feet, excuse me, are paddling to the water, and that's how they're moving around from one place to another while they're in the water. So webbed feet are a very, very important adaptation and feature. Now let me get the duck back and see if I can zoom in so you can kind of see the feet. You see that? There's their feet. You can see their digits. There's 3 toes, and there's a 4th one there in the back. You can kind of see it, 4th toe. Okay, so they have those 3 right there. So the skin right here is between the toes. It's kind of it's almost clear-like, you know, transparent, if you will, translucent. And it has little nails. Okay, so it does give it some grip when it's walking on land or in the mud and so forth. So that those skin between the toes are an important adaptation. Now let's talk about still talking about their feet. We said they're in the water and they have the water beating off of them. We said that they have webbed feet to paddle in the water. Now, ducks are typically found here in the greater Fort Worth area during the winter time. So in fall and the winter, we have ducks that come here. Now, we do have some that stick around all year round, like wood ducks and so forth. But most ducks will come here during the winter time. They like to be in cooler temperatures. So during the summertime, when it's hot here in Texas, they migrate and move up to the northern states. So let me talk about migration real quick. I'm all over the place this morning. Migration is basically the movement from one place to another, point A to point B, because there's no food. The food source that they have is lacking from point A, so they have to go to point B. So ducks up in the north, because it gets cold, and a lot of people are going to associate or say, well, they migrate because it's cold. Well, yes, they do. It is cold, so the cold affects their food source. Now, there are animals, there's examples of animals that survive in really cold regions, and even some find some food sources. They adapt to that. But ducks, their food source they're trying to find is no longer available or as accessible. So they're going to migrate, move to point B, which we're point B down here in Texas, they're in Fort Worth area. So they migrate here. So they move here around, they're starting to come in right now, actually. So November and December, January, it's a little colder outside. Okay, it's not summertime anymore, right? So they have to find places to find food, and they come here. Well, you think about it, their feet are underwater. Now you imagine doing that in the wintertime. You put your hands in the water. You're like, whoa! You have a pool at home or a neighborhood pool. You put your hands in the water. It's cold, right? You don't want to swim in the wintertime. So ducks, how are they adapted to that? Well, there's a really cool process. As they have their feet in the water, as the blood is coming from their heart, you know, their arterial blood, arteries. Sorry, I was trying to say arterial. Their arteries that's coming down, and the blood that's going back to the heart through the veins and so forth. They come together. They're very close together, and the blood in the veins actually allow for that blood from the heart and the arteries to cool down. And the cooling down it's not like hot to cold. I mean hot and cold. It's warm and cool. So there's not much of a difference in temperature. And when you have a very slight difference or a slight change in temperature, there's a slow chance. Well, not slow chance. Let me rephrase that. The loss of heat is lower. There's a lower chance of losing heat when the temperatures are pretty close together. So as that blood's coming in, it's a little warmer, and that blood comes in, it cools it down and keeps it nice and at this smaller window of temperatures, so the loss of heat's not there. So that way they can hold in as much of the warmth as possible and not lose all the heat. So a really big, strange concept, and I hope I explained it just enough so you can understand it. So that helps them paddle in the water. The other adaptation they have is that bill. Look at that bill. This bill, birds don't have teeth, okay? But ducks have this little nail here. It's like we say it's a nail. It's like a little nail there, and that helps them to dig around and so forth. But one of the more important parts of their bill, he's like all over the place. I'm going to turn him upside down so you can see this, okay? See how I can do this. How am I going to do this so you can see this? Look, do you see along the edge here, these little looks like teeth, like a comb? They're all along the edge there, and those are called lamellae. And what they do is as the duck is foraging around for maybe acorns, invertebrates, plant material in the water, they can grab it with their beak, get the food, and these little lamellae here serve as a way of releasing water, releasing mud, by still holding the food in their bill, but lets the water out and lets the mud out. It's kind of the same thing as your parents, that they make pasta, spaghetti. They'll boil the water, put the spaghetti, make the spaghetti, and then they put the spaghetti in here. And what happens? Well, the spaghetti stays in the bowl, okay? But what's coming out of this strainer here? Yeah, the water. The water comes out. It's the same concept. So ducks have a built-in a strainer, if you will, on their face in the form of a bill. So those are some really cool adaptations, ways that a bird, this particular bird, can survive with those physical traits. That bill with the little lamellae, the webbed feet, the ability to cool down the blood in the feet so that there's not a lot of loss of heat, okay? And in the feathers, how they can repel water. So lots of cool adaptations. Those are physical traits. Now, we already talked about migration. Migration is more that the behavior. They realize, wait a minute, there's no food here. I have to go where there's food. Same thing with me. I don't have food at home. Well, I got to go find a place that has food, right? So I migrate to a restaurant or some friend's house so I can go eat, right? So same thing with them. So all cool adaptations, both physical and behavior in the form of migration. Now, we talked about their habitats a little bit. Typically, we find ducks, they're hanging out in the water, okay? There are some that actually hang out in trees. Like wood ducks, their feet are adapted and they can perch. But typically, the duck feet are for water, paddling around. There's a couple different types of ducks. We group them. We group dabbling ducks. Dabbling. Not like Daffy Duck. We should invite a Daffy Duck. I should have. Anyway, Donald wasn't available. I got to go get Daffy, right? So dabbling ducks. Those are the ones that are in the water. They're just got their bill in the water and they're just sifting around looking for plants and things like that. Then you have diving ducks. Diving ducks that... That's all, folks. Now I sound like Elmer Fudd. I'm getting all those characters out, cartoon characters out. So they go down into water and they're pulling vegetation from the bottom of that little pond, that little wetland, to get food. Their bills are more pointier, if you will, as opposed to a dabbling duck. They're nice, round and broad. Okay, so they have different types of beaks. Now, the last thing I want to talk about before we show you some pictures are the importance of ducks. You think about a mallard you may find in your pond or a wetland near you and think, that duck's not very important, but actually it is. And the reason why that duck is important, because our wetlands are important habitats. They're home to lots of animals we've talked about before. We actually did a talk on wetlands about the invertebrates, like the dragonfly nymphs, that before dragonflies fly off or damselflies fly off, they start in the water. Frogs, so the tadpoles and the shrimp and just all sorts of animals that live in that water. They're very important. And what those animals need are plants. They need plants to help have oxygen, help find shelter, produce food for those animals, like the animals that live in the water. So plant life is very important, and mallards and ducks play an important role. And I throw out mallard because we all see it, and you're about to see a picture of a mallard too. It has a green head. I almost brought one out. Or male one so you can see the color. I have a female here. So the importance of ducks. They are very important for wetlands because they allow for the different types of plants that survive in a wetland. How so? Well, there's been studies, people studying birds and study mallards in particular, and found that they put little GPS trackers on them, and basically a little backpack and a little tracker, and they can track where they're moving. They look on their computers and they can see where those ducks are going. They can track them. And they found that at night they're going to different they go to pond A here and pond B there and pond C there, and they're actually grabbing seeds and they're eating seeds and foraging. And then they go to another pond during the day and they just socialize, rest, and, well, you guessed it, they go to the bathroom. Yeah, I know. Go ahead, stop laughing, stop. I know every time we talk about an animal going to the bathroom, the kids, they just go crazy laughing. So go ahead, get it out of your system. Ducks go to the bathroom too. So whenever they go to the bathroom, all those seeds that they've eaten, they get deposited. And they go into the water and they slowly go down into the soil. into that mud. And guess what happens? You guessed it, they germinate and they grow. So ducks actually play an important role to diversify and spread seeds so plant life can survive from one place to another, providing food and shelter for all those really important animals that live in the water. Ducks are very important, as you can see. And otherwise, some of these plants may not get to point A to point P, point B to point C, and so forth, without an animal dispersing and moving those seeds. So that's very important. Woo! Man, I spent a lot of time talking about ducks. This is probably one of the longer sessions I have, and I apologize. No, I am not going to apologize. I hope you enjoyed it and learned a lot. We talked about what ducks were. We talked about the feathers, the different types of feathers. We talked about adaptations like the feet, their bill, their feathers, the temperature regulation in their feet to keep them nice and cool, or warm. Warm in the water. We talked about migration, the habitats where they find, like the rivers and ponds and wetlands, and even in the forest like wood ducks. And we talk about the importance of them. So, whew, wow, that was a lot of information. I hope you stuck around to enjoy it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to allow you to see some pictures. These are images that our wonderful volunteer photographers have taken over the years here at the Nature Center in our area. And I want you to see the different types of ducks that we have. So enjoy these pictures. As you can see, there's lots of types of ducks out there, and I hope you enjoyed seeing the different variety out there that we have at the Nature Center. Now, this is the time of the year. Parents, get your kids out here. Come out to the Nature Center, visit your local pond or wetland, and come out and see the ducks. It's really cool to see them. Now, one thing I want to point out, and I cannot stress this enough, since we're talking about ducks, take your kids out there, see all the different types of ducks and the diversity of them. But I want to encourage you, do not feed the ducks. I know, I probably lost half of you right now. Well, I like to feed the ducks, and the ducks, it's fun. The kids, they get a close look at them and so forth, and I understand that. But if you appreciate ducks and you understand all the things that we just talked about and how important they are, we want to treat them right? So feeding the ducks is not a good idea. Believe me, there is food out there for them. There's plenty of food out there for them. We don't need to feed them. Now you're talking, well, I have some ducks in my park and I want to feed them. Do not feed them. Now I know I see many of you out there. You're throwing crackers and bread. Do you want to eat a lot of bread? You know what happens when you eat a lot of bread? It's not a good thing. It's not healthy. Okay, so there are areas where birds, ducks in particular, are so used to you feeding them. Without you, I don't know how well they'll do. So I'm gonna offer an alternative. I'm gonna say this. Now, I personally, yours truly, do not feed them in the wild, at a pond. I'm not gonna do it. Not gonna do it. But I know there's that little urge out there, and you want to feed them. But don't give them bread. If you're gonna do something, get some grapes and cut the grapes up in small pieces. Get cracked corn. Get things like that are a more healthier option for them if you just absolutely have to do it. Okay? Don't give them bread. Okay? So that's my PSA on feeding ducks. Now, again, got to see some cool images of them. Got to learn a lot about them. And then that's my PSA on feeding ducks. Don't do it. But if you just have to do it, cut up some grapes and use some cracked corn and things like that. Okay. All right, so that's going to conclude our program today. Hopefully you learned a lot. Hopefully you stayed tuned. I know it's long, but I love talking about ducks. They're so fascinating. So I encourage you to get out this winter and check out your local pond, your local park here at the Nature Center, and check out the many types of ducks out there. Look at their behavior. Just enjoy seeing them. And then as you are viewing them, just think about some of the things that I share with you about the importance of adaptations and so forth, so that you can put two and two together, both the enjoyment of watching them in the wild and the importance and the functionality and the cool things that they possess that allow them to survive in their environment. So as I say always, I hope you get out and discover nature on your own, and we'll check in next week, same time, same place, and we'll talk a little bit about fur. That's right, fur. So have a great day, guys, and we'll see y'all next week. Bye-bye.